Well, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you happen to be watching this. For me, it is noon on Sunday, 1st of August, 2021. Here in partly cloudy, says my phone, Seattle. Nice summer day, so we'll probably stream for a couple hours and then go out and get out in the sun. So, what are we looking at today? The first thing we're going to look at today is we're going to do a quick discussion and issue review. This should be very fast. I did a quick browse here, just a couple of things to look at. This one shows gray, but maybe not, because it's got 3 responses. We'll take a look at both of these. Let's see. Class data cases do not always show in Test Explorer. Oh yeah, this is yep. Okay, this is still correctly answered. Okay. How to perform integration tests from MVC. I have an MVC app with Web API. Web API is using XGen. I want to test the MVC app, which has controllers and helper class to call the API. Start class of my MVC is as follows. Controller constructor, base API service client constructor as follows. Method to call is as follows. Tried several options, but nothing works. Hope some of you experts can help. Yeah, I can probably help. I don't know that doing this on stream is the best use of time, because I would basically have to poke around and see how stuff works currently. I honestly haven't used MVC for my day job for quite a while, so I don't really know what the state of the art is for this stuff, but since MVC itself uses XUnit to write their tests, I'm sure, they have stuff to make it work. So I'll do a little research on this later. So I'll go ahead and leave that open. All right. Issues. Looks like we've got 4 issues with no tags. Test case parallelization when there's no tests, when there's no class collection. Yeah, this is this is an old issue. So why did this oh, this is the new sort. So it gets sort by recently updated. So things are popping up to the top because they've been recently updated. All right, that's fair. So what is the recent update to this? Someone just thanking someone else for making it work. Okay, nothing to see here. That's already on our list. XUnit 10.10 is triggered for strings which are convertible to decimal int. Values not convertible to the method type. Values not convertible to the method type. String values converted to decimal internally. Still, XUnit 10.10 is produced with error priority by default. Probably analyzer should be updated similar fashion to this. All right, label-wise, that's fine. We'll put this in analyzers. We'll put this in help wanted, and we'll call this a bug. All right, why does XUnit deal with execution context? Isn't it handled in the async method builder's async infrastructure? Curious to learn why there are classes that help deal with execution context and manually setting capturing of it when I believe those things are part of TPL flow. Because we're not using TPL. Well, the easiest, I'm not going to read Stephen Taub's blog post. I think I'm pretty familiar with that. The easiest thing to do would be, by the way, my Whizzle is apparently broken. I've been trying to shut down for 10 minutes. So hopefully we don't need anything on the Whizzle side, because I'm going to need to reboot if that's the case. So if I were to go into V2, or is it XUnit V2? XUnit V2. All right, let's open this up in a solution. We'll take a quick look at the use of execution context in V2. Okay, so first case where we see it being used is the max concurrency sync context. And then, of course, we've got execution context helpers. Let's go to the max concurrency sync context and talk about this. It uses execution context helper is supported. So this is going to be going to look to see if we have access to execution context. And you can see that we build execution in two different modes, .NET Framework and .NET Standard. So the .NET Framework code, yeah, you're always supported. But in .NET Standard 1.1, we could very well be running in a place where execution context doesn't exist. And so we have to go find these things with reflection and make sure that we get the ability to capture the execution context. And then what we have then is, run an action on the execution context, where this is the execution context. So run on context is this lambda that we put together, which basically calls execution context run. Right, so we see that up here in the .NET Framework version. It's easier to see. Execution context run is what we're calling when we ask you to run something on a callback. And then capture we call execution context capture. Down here we have to do all that with reflection. So why do we use execution context for max concurrency sync context? Because we need to capture it. So the question then. So if we go to max concurrency sync context, let's go grab. No, that was more completion of the URL than I wanted. It's interesting. This is a static bool. All right. So we need it here, basically. Although that's the V3 version. Let's go get the V2 version. Might be there. Oh, it's going to be an execution, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So we need it here. So TLDR, we need it to implement synchronization context. And the longer answer. We are not using TPL here. Specifically, we're not using async methods here. We are implementing a sync context in order to limit the number of threads that are allowed to run concurrently. And so we need to capture the execution context and run on it when we're called back. To post a handler, post, what do they call that thing? Post a callback, post a callback. So let's go look at this. What does it mean? What does it mean to flow it? Basically describing the difference between thread local storage and async local. I assume he's going to get around to talking about async local here in a minute. We feel like an implementation detail for most developers. It's precisely the implementation detail that we need access to in order to implement async context. We're not just using them, we're implementing them. So there you go. That's the answer to that question. Thank you for your question, Spirit Bob. And label-wise, I'm going to call this a discussion. Actually, I don't think I'm going to put a label on it. I think I'm just going to close it. Further discussion on the topic. Please open it as a discussion item instead of an issue. Thanks. And let's grab the discussions link. There you go. And then close. Okay. Add a README to NuGet packages. Hello, I'm from the NuGet team at Microsoft. We recently finished support at embedding READMEs into NuGet packages. We plan to place these READMEs front and center on NuGet.org. Would you be willing to accept a contribution to add embedded READMEs to your package? I guess. I mean... Blog and docs. Just a blog on the state of the NuGet ecosystem where we discussed insights gained from hundreds of customers, blah, 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 blah. README, how to use. Having a README. If you already have a README MD file, including in your package, easy as blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's my problem with this. The answer is yes, I'm fine having a README in packages. The problem is I don't necessarily want someone to just put the existing README in all the packages because that's not going to be sufficient. I'm fine, and let's write that. think I would decline that as a PR. I'm assuming you aren't offering to write those dozen or so README files. Grin. So I'll tag this and put it in my Creo roadmap. All right, label-wise, this is it's really none of these things and all of these things. I'm just going to call it a feature, just so I have a tag on something. And then 2357, you're going into the roadmap. Bugs, small features. You can be 2357. Okay. So there we go. Now it's been tagged in the roadmap. Okay. On form. Okay, so we're back to integration tests. Yep. Okay, so that should be it for these. Yeah. Okay. One new PR: fix assert throws double stack trace. Interesting that it's there and not here. Not 100% sure how that's possible. Oh, it's an exception utility. Hmm. So we only want to reproduce the inner exception if it's different from the outer exception, which I would agree with. I would like to see a change on this, though, right? I mean, I'd like to see a test for this. So let's go grab this then. Add additional commits. That's great. 2356. 2356. Okay. Git remote add this as PR 2356. Fetch PR 2356. XUnit 2353. Let's see how far behind this is. It's probably up to date since it was just yesterday. Yep, looks like it's up to date. So let's go find a let's go find a way to test this. So the change went into audio is feeding through twice. Oh, that's weird. I wonder why that was. Let me make sure I don't have the stream open anywhere, just to double check. I don't think I do. I don't know what the problem was. Sorry about that, Gary. I don't know what that was. All right, so the file that got changed here is exception utility, line 88. So if we go to exception utility, line 88. All right, this was the bit that was added. So what I'd like to see is, first of all, do we have exception utility tests? We do. Okay, so this is our own error metadata, sure. Combined messages. 16 exception, nonce within exceptions, aggregate exception, missing exception types, public void, don't show double exceptions from assert throws. Okay. Oh, this is on error metadata, isn't it? This is messages, but it's done with error metadata. So if I do this, so EX is going to be assert throws. Name, value type. Trying to remember exactly where this issue was. 2353. 2353. Right. So what I really want to do is this actually throws an exception. So record exception for this. And let's do this with the stack trace. Let's see what we can look at in the stack trace and see how easy this is to repro. This is core? No, this is run a utility, so gotta run the right things. Run a utility tests. Do I have to convert it? Is that what I have to do? I think I have to convert it, don't I? Metadata. Let's see. There's like an error metadata. That's this one. That's just an implementation, right? Of error metadata. There's another one. Oh, but I can add an exception. Perfect. Oh. New error metadata. And I think I should be able to add the exception to it just with that. Nope, apparently not. Metadata add, EX, oh, because it's got the optional index on it, that's why. Alright, so, and you're upset because you might be null, right? Not null EX. So that's that, assert equal, let's see. We want this, the result. Let's result dot stack trace. Or is that already a string? Oh, that's already a string. That's fine. Okay. Oh, that's the message. Oh, I actually care about the stack trace. Think. Yes, I actually care about the stack trace. So let's come down here to don't show double stack trace. Assert throws. And that was not what I wanted to do either. So let's do equal object. This is resolve combine stack traces. Do something. Lambda. I mean, all this is really weird, right? It all looks correct. Oh, you need a semicolon. Okay, well that's weird. Maybe I shouldn't do a record exception, but record exception should be getting me, you know, like the thing. Anyway, let me verify that this does what we say it does. Does. How did we end up with double? How did we end up with the exception doubled? It's like the inner exception of the exception points to itself. But how would you not be in an infinite loop then? It's weird. I'm not 100% sure how to write the test for this, which is maybe why the PR author did not write a test for this. Maybe I just take it as is, because I think I've just about expended the total amount of time that I want to spend on this. Alright, let me go back to dev. Let me delete this branch. Remove remote, which is pure 2356. We'll get rid of this change. And we'll just take this. Thanks. Squash and merge. Okay, and we'll just take it. Actually, okay, that went into main, good. FF only, from main into dev, from origin main into dev. All right, fingers, do your thing. Go up into dev. All right, so assert throws. Yep, that was the thing. Yep, okay. Everything else there is older. Everything there is older, and then we're here. Okay. So the thing that I wanted to work on today was this provide richer theory data API, the non-enumerable of object array. So today, your test case source has to implement IEnumerable. I don't know why we have a numerator here, but I think this should be IEnumerable. Yeah, today you have to implement IEnumerable of object array in order to return data. The problem with that is that's just the data. That's not any metadata about the data. Right. So the person originally wanted traits. They wanted traits for each data item. But my comment last year was we should probably also support skip. And then maybe metadata overrides like test description. So like today, if you set a test description on a test method, which is how you do it, right, with the fact attribute. In fact, let's go ahead and show you how this works. Let's open up. Let's go to cert tests. It's my favorite file to have fun in. Boolean assert tests. All right, so we'll call this foo. And then we'll say, hey, we have a theory, public void theory method, int bar. All right, then we do inline data 42, inline data 2112. Let's make these fail so that we can see how they get displayed. You can see their display here is right now foo.theory method bar 42. If they had a namespace would be on here as well. So I can override the description here, the display name is what we call this. This is my test method. All right. Then now we see it says this is my test method with bar of 42 and bar of 2112. So when I say being able to override the description, what I'm talking about is this part here, not necessarily this part here because we already have that, but this gets sort of auto-generated from the arguments. So it'd be nice to be able to have that without, be able to override that. So that's one of the other things we had as an override. All right, where's my browser? So let's see, did anybody else, is this covered by theory data of T? The answer is no. Okay, so this is an interesting question though. We also have these theory data classes. So theory data of T, there's a base class called theory data, which is an iRead-only collection of object array. Which of course iRead-only collections are IEnumerable of object array. And then we have theory data of T, T1, T2, all the way down to at least 10, I think, right? So we can do up to 10 data rows. And the way you would use that is, like, instead of having inline data here, and let's say we had member data. So we'll make the foo data member public static IEnumerable of object array foo data. All right. So one thing we could do is we could new this up. We could say new list of object array, where each one of these is a new object array, 42, and a new object array, 2112, right? And now when I run these things, we get the same thing, 42 and 2112, except now we're up here, we can do this dynamically instead of an inline data. There's a lot of limitations for inline data. But this is like a horrible way to have to write this, and so theory data allows you to do this. Theory data of int, basically, so what's that saying is theory data for a fact, or for a theory that has one parameter of type int. So one thing I can do now is I can do that, which is much nicer from a syntax perspective, right? And it's also type safe, right? So I can't accidentally pass a string where I know I need an int, but I could absolutely pass a string here, which then would get a runtime failure. Of course. Which would get a runtime failure about mismatched data types. So the 42 and the 2112 run and fail as expected, but this fails for a different reason, which is can't convert a string into an int, which is true. Cannot convert a string into an int. So theory data is nice because it's like a little helpful helper for us to get on track with types. It's probably also a convenient place for us to implement whatever this thing is going to be called, which is the implementation on top of just IEnumerable of object array. Theory data should make it easy to do that. Okay, so we have that. So that's our quick discussion of theory data. Let's come back over here. So what is this thing going to look like? Let's talk about how theory data comes into the system. All right, so first of all, we have our theory discover, which is the thing that discovers test cases. And so this gets invoked whenever we have a method that's decorated with theory instead of fact. Right, so how does that get wired up? Theory attribute is what you put on your method. It derives from fact. But we decorate it with this execute test case discover to say, by the way, the theory discover is the way you discover this. The fact discover, which is the thing that's normally used for facts, doesn't really understand how to do theories, so we had to override it. All right, so the theory discover then gets data. So let's do discover. This is kind of the entry point, right? So discover, given a set of discovery options and a test method and the theory attribute, how do we find data? So you'll notice that some of these things are abstractions, like this iTest method is iAttributeInfo. In particular, this iAttributeInfo is like our own version of AttributeInfo from System Reflection. Or maybe it's called something else, but maybe it's just iAttributeInfo from Reflection. I forget exactly what it's called. Anyway, this is an abstraction across attributes. And we can do things like get the constructor arguments to the attribute, get any attributes that the attribute is decorated with, and we can also get named arguments as well. So the way attributes work is, there's the constructor arguments, and then you can set up properties. They show up as named arguments in there as well. So, theory discover. We go say, if it's skip, then we just give you a skip back. We don't try and enumerate the data. If you want us to pre-enumerate the data, then we will do that. Otherwise, we come all the way down to the bottom. We may hit the bottom for many reasons, but basically what this is this is what happens if you have a test case for theory data that can't be enumerated, either because the user didn't want to enumerate it or because it fails to serialize. So let's go take a look at what all this code does, right? So we go find data attributes. So inline data, member data, all that stuff boils down to this base attribute, which is data attribute, which says, in order to get the data, you need to give me a read-only collection of object array. All right, so this is essentially, this used to be IEnumerable, but in V3 we changed this to iRead-only collection as an optimization, performance optimization. So this is kind of the this is the implementation vector for getting data. This is the thing we definitely need to change. So this needs to be something. Maybe it's still an iRead-only collection, and it's an iRead-only collection of something else, like let's call it an iTheory data row, right? So get me one of those. In each one of these is a single row of data. All right, so let's just poke around and see how this feels in terms of the API shape. So let's add iTheory data row as an interface. Okay. So now this is going to return iTheory data rows, one or more sets of theory data. We'll call this rows instead of sets. Each invocation test method is represented by a single object array. A single instance of iTheory data row. That better describes this. All right, abstract attribute for which represents the data source or data theory data source providers provide this, blah, 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 blah. So the smallest version of this that sort of gets us in the right direction would be something like iRead-only collection of object array. Get data. Okay. I'll just put empty summaries in here for the moment, just so it doesn't get too cranky with us. That's the closest. Actually, that. Read-only collection of objects. Right, at the moment, we had, I guess, we had this as an array. I suppose we could do that. I mean, that is pretty much the direct replacement, right? We can always come back and change our mind on that. Okay. So then that would get us access to the data. So the theory discover is going to be broken in a few places, but before we can get to that, we have to fix all the implementers of this, who are now going to return iTheory data row. So that is the broken thing. We'll come fix that in a minute. Let's, what else? Inline data needs to be this. We'll fix that in a second. Class data needs to be this. And then we'll fix that in a second. So the data discoverer is also needs to be changed so that we do that. So iData discoverer now needs to return that. All right, and data discoverer will return that. Inline data discoverer needs to return that. Okay, that's fine. It's a type change. Member data attribute base. Okay, so these are the type changes. So then we're also into theory discoverer. So resolved data is the data row, which is an iTheory data row. So if this is just a call to get data on the data row, resolved data, this should pass in resolved data. At the moment, all we're doing is taking that thing and pulling the data out of it again, right? So the inline data discoverer here, let's fix these up. So we'll say new. We need an implementation of this, right? So we'll call this theory data row for now. Theory data may play into this later. Doesn't need to be public yet. The easiest thing for this would be to just take the data here. Alright, so this data is guard, argument not null, data, name of data, data. And this is just going to return data. So our inline data discoverer here now says, oh, this can be params. That'll make our lives easier, right? Because now we can say new inline data attributes args to array. I guess I leave that to array on there. Args is not null. So what is your complaint now? Oh, yes. This needs to be a read-only collection of iTheory data row, and now you're going to tell me that's not read-only collection? Inline data attribute? Oh, yes, that was dumb. That's supposed to be theory data row. I don't know why I typed the wrong thing there. It's fine. Okay. So given that, we've got then, what's next? Inline data, new theory data row for the data. Let's just grab that. That's going to be that. Now this is we already have an IEnumerable of objects. So here, let's make a quick note here. Allow class members, allow classes to also return IEnumerable of iTheory data row. So here, what we've got is data, and for the data, we need to create a new theory data row for each element of data. And this needs to be a read-only collection. So let's see, cannot convert an IEnumerable of theory data row into a read-only collection of iTheory data row. That's that's not going to help, is it? Cast or to read-only collection. Should be fine. Okay. Inline data is just one element, so it's an array with one element. Okay, so I did that right. All right, who's next? So this is member data. So give me the data items, cast them to objects, select to convert them, and then cast or to read-only. So convert data item right now takes an object and converts it into an object array. we could make this also return an iTheory data row. Okay. And then for each data row and data, so we got to do a get data here. No, let's see, data row data. So we'll do data row data is data row get data. You want data row data. Okay, and then we have this, which is an override, which now needs to be an iTheory data row. If you're null, you get just a new one. Which is empty, which is fine. Otherwise, you get a new one of these for the array. Okay, let's take a quick peek at all the things we did. We did quite a bit, so let's see. Let's do color words. So class data is now returning iTheory data. We select it into iTheory row data. Inline data, just news one up. Member data either returns an empty one or one full of an array. And then signature changes here for member data. All right, signature change here for the base class. Signature change here for the discoverer. And then we go get data. Signature change, inline data, so just one item of data. And then the runner goes and gets the data and runs the data that was gotten. Okay, that seems reasonable. And only broke the entire world, that's fine. So everything related to testing this is clearly going to be So for data attribute, we'll put it to do on here. Need a version which also accepts iTheory data row. So the returns here for iTheory data row needs to basically do new. The data here is an IEnumerable of object array already. So this is then one of our selects. iTheory data row, which apparently does need to be public. So let's go back to theory data row. Make it public. Put some empty summaries on here for the moment so the compiler isn't unhappy. Data may be null here. Data may be null here, that's true. Okay. Let's see what else. So we broke theory discover and theory acceptance tests. Pretty much what I expected to break. It's good. Good that we're not breaking any. Doesn't appear to be that we're breaking anything else. Theory data row. You're going to get a new theory data row for that. Actually, we need multiples of those. Actually, no. If I'm properly translating this, it should be theory data row, like no data. Not one row with no data in it. Okay. You are I theory data row. You are new I theory data row for 42. And a new theory data row for 2112. Okay. Okay, divide by 0. Theory data row. Non-serializable attributes. Okay. And then this. Okay. And then theory acceptance tests. So that's, and that's, which is, I don't really understand what this is. We'll get to you in a moment. So this is an array with an object in it. So this is our theory data row with a new object in it. Okay. Is that everybody? And these were, let's see, the theory acceptance tests are in core. Theory discover tests are in core. Okay, that was not what I wanted to do, but sure, go ahead. I want core tests. They all seem to run. We'll do a full build, test everything. Okay. So from a test perspective, this is kind of weird. Don't know why you would ever have a data attribute with no data in it. I guess if you skip, you don't care about the data. But whatever. Okay. Theory data row, 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 and then back into implementation again. Everybody seems to be running. It's a good sign. I'll say there was like an 80-20 chance that it was correct. Okay. So, are we happy with this? From a design perspective. Theory data row, which is a row of data. Theory data is many rows of data. So theory data could use theory data rows. Theory data is down here outside of the SDK namespace. Hi, theory data row. Do you belong in SDK? That's the first question. Or do you belong down here with everybody else? I feel like you belong down here. Not in the SDK namespace. That shouldn't break anybody. Everybody should have access to that already. Okay, so there's a single row of theory data along with the metadata, along with optional metadata attached to the row. Reasonable. Get the theory data. Gets the theory data. That's it. That's it. Just gets the theory data. Do we want it to still be an array? Probably. Probably. Sorry for leaning back there. Alright, yeah, probably. It's reasonable. We'll stay there. Okay. Default implementation of theory data row. Which turns the provided, which accepts pre-enumerated data. I mean, this is kind of an interesting question, right? Because there is an alternative here about what this could be. This could be IEnumerable, which would allow us to enumerate the data in real time without having to pre-calculate the array, but at the cost of having the enumeration machinery in place, theoretically. Whereas an array says, yes, you must have it all ahead of time. So that's the other option. Although I have gone away from IEnumerable as much as possible in favor of iRead-Only Collection, as you saw earlier, as a way to guard against the notion of double enumeration. Like, how many IEnumerables do I really have? Let's ignore tests. So there are collection asserts. Let's ignore the asserts, but yeah, there are collection asserts which take them in. Argument formatter, which takes it in. Argument formatter probably could be a read-only. Yeah, probably could be a read-only. I'm going to ignore the exceptions for a moment. So yeah, everything in the assertion library I don't care about. Dictionary extensions, enumerable extensions I don't care about. Reflection, reflector, I don't care about. Exception, utility, I don't care about. Yeah, matrix theory data. Anyway, could be an read-only collection of object rather than object array. Read-only collection is itself enumerable with a count. Let's start here. I'm sure I broke a few more things along the way now. This is a param, so it has to be an array. Method resolve method arguments. It's in type utility, and it takes an object array and gives back an object array. Of course, it creates a new array too, doesn't it? Yeah, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I do want to keep it as a object array for now. Okay. Gets the theory data. You are an inherit doc. New instance of the theory data row class. Encapsulating the provided theory data. The data for the theory row. Okay. That should be all right. All right, so that's just so we touched data discover and data attribute. Those are sort of the fundamental places. We change the signature and data attribute. We change the way data discoverer works. And then consumption and theory discover and delay enumerated theory test case runner. And then implementations of the discoverers and the data rows. Okay, that all makes sense. Let's throw this in a comment, a commit. This is the issue we're working on. 1758. Introduce I theory data row. That's what it was called, right? I theory data row. Change data attribute to return this instead of object array for each row. Wake up, GPG. Sign my commit. There we go. Okay. So that, I mean, in essence, that's the start of this. But what they would really like is traits, skip, and maybe description. So let's go back to iTheory data row. Say string, skip, reason, get. Okay, so that's what it looks like. We're going to do skip reason on there. Let's go back to our theory data row. We'll make you a get set, and inherit doc as our implementation. Now let's TDD our way into testing this. So let's go to probably actually need 3 theory acceptance tests. Class with optional parameters. Parameters valid. Class with parameters. Implicit, explicit conversions. Class with operator conversions. Okay, class with... What else forgot? We got a lot of them, huh? Probably in this grouping we want something about skip. So how would I do this? I'll avoid skip theory. X. Inline data 42 skip equals do not run me. So that's already there. So inline data already has the ability to skip because data attribute already has the ability to skip, but that skips a set of data. That's not exactly how I'd want to do this. Skip theory, let's say skip via theory data row. Let's do that. Skipped via theory data row. Okay. Public static enumerable of iTheory data row. That new theory data row 42, and then we want to say skip reason. Skip, thank you. Skip reason is do not run this test. Okay. Run this now, this should fail. You skipped blah 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 blah, yield an item that is not an object array. Well, that's not why I expected it to fail, but that's as good a reason as any for it to fail. Okay. I'd really like, from an acceptance test perspective, though, I'd really like to do this as source code. I really don't want to do it here. You are an acceptance test. Oh. Well, what's interesting is that, like, I made that public, but it really shouldn't have been public. This isn't getting run because it's flaky. I think I might have fixed the flakiness. So let's do this. Assert equal. Skipped. Alright, because that's the string, that's the display name. Okay. And also, I would like to do an assert empty. Result of type test failed. Alright. That should now fail. Expected a single element, but it was empty. That was our skip. Okay, so we know that the reason it's skipping right now is that we aren't actually allowing theory data row. I'm actually going to leave this public. I'm gonna unpublic it when we're done, because I just like seeing this here. Otherwise, I have to breakpoint on this and then go dig inside to see this value. I'd rather not have to do that. Okay, so member data attribute base. It's really member data attribute 43, which is yelling at us. Which is here, you need to be an object array. So what we'll do is we'll say if item is my theory data row, then we'll just return the data row. Alright. That should get us to the point of failure because we're running it and we shouldn't be. Alright, this should be a skip and not a run. Data attribute base. Parameters. Parameters. Oh yeah, okay. convert data item is the abstract. And that's where we are here. Okay. This is going to feel strange, but I like it better ordered like that. Find all my reasons to bail out and then fail at the end. Okay. So we need to say the thing is skippable. How does inline data do this? Inline data discoverer. So data attribute itself can be skipped. Marks all the test cases referenced here as skipped. So it is the so they just come back as skip test cases. Yeah, you blank line, you don't belong there. Okay, back to our theory acceptance test. We're not skipping. Skip reason, we should know the skip reason. Do not run this test. Oh, we're not looking for skip reason here. This is the display name. It's the option parameters. It's like I feel like this is the wrong place to put this test, but I don't know if this is where the right place to put this test would be. Generic with serializable data? Like there's no just straight up test. Oh. Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place for this. Probably isn't the right place for this. Probably belongs here instead. So explicit, class, empty theory data class, mixed, multiple, no data, null data. Let's say this was theory data row. Let's skip. What if I did this? How do these tests written? They're written like this. They give me test cases back, right? Test class, class with explicit converted data. Oh, I see. Yeah. Class with skipped theory data rows. Data. Let's see, public void. This is where our theory goes. Test with theory row, some theory. So test with some skipped theory rows. Okay, so here, this is can skip from a theory data row. Okay, so this is this class. This is this method. Fact attribute is go get the fact attribute from that method. Yep. And test cases go discover the test cases. So test case, cert collection, test cases, order by display name, test case, test case, so there's one of those, there's one of those. Unit delay enumerated theory. No, okay, so unit test case. Your theory discoverer tests plus this dot this. X is 2112. Year 42. Null. Test case skip reason. Do not run this test. Test case skip reason. Okay, let's run that. There we go. A pre-enumerated theory test case. Not a test case. Discovery options. Do we have to pass in pre-enumeration to the discovery options? Probably not. I think our attribute will pull the default, which should be on. So we got here at index 1, and we expected do not run this test. We actually got null. That's because we're not reading it, which is totally fine. That's the thing we're looking to implement. So let's go to theory discover. Create test cases for skip. To do skip reason should be passed on to the test case. That's an interesting idea. Why does it not? I don't know. Why does it not? Create test cases for skipped data row. That's more likely what we're going to be using, right? Hey, comma, what are you doing down there? You should be there anyway. So that's a new test case. Transfer to skipped data row. This gets called where? This gets called here. So we're looking at skip reason. Skip reason at the moment comes from the data attribute. And then we can say var data row skip reason is skip reason or data row skip reason, right? Create test cases for skipped data row, otherwise create test cases for a data row. So the skipped data row gets an XUnit skipped data row test case, not a pre-enumerated data row test case. And there we got skipped. So that means if I were to run this and then do like a 96, I'd see 96 and 42, 96 and 21, 12. So we're still running them. I don't understand why we're still running them. Because we don't pre-enumerate? That would be an interesting thing. Let's go to core tests. Pre-enumerate theories. Okay. See, now we got a skip here. And we've got other things that are broken when we do that, by the way. Which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Yeah, like this data that's being pre-enumerated isn't legal data. All right. Test output helper tests. Let's go fix that. Those need to not be pre-enumerated. There you go. So now we've got a skip and a fail. So clearly there's a different path for pre-enumeration and not pre-enumeration. So that means this test is pre-enumerated. What that also means is that the delay enumerated theory test case is probably another place where we need to look for skips on the data. Delay enumerated theory test case runner. So a skip here would skip the entire set of data, the multiple data rows. So the whole test case would be skipped. And discover, so here's the discover, get the data. That gets our stuff, and here's where we get our data row data. And we have another skip reason here as well, which would be the data row skip reason. But I can't add that yet until I know where that test belongs. So, is there tests for this runner? There are. Enumerates data at runtime and executes one test for each data row. Discover which throws returns a single failed test. Disposes the argument. Only skips data rows with skip reason. Let's say not only. Let's say skips data rows with skip reason. And then another one which would say public static async skips data theory rows with skip reason. Skips data attributes. Test with some data skipped. Right, so those are the data attributes that are skipped. Alright, so then we'd have test with theory row data. Actually, we can probably just add more data in here. Which is, let's do some data 2. IEnumerable of I theory row data row, some data 2. Yield return new theory data row. We'll do 16, 24, not skipped. Yield return new theory data row. 1836 skipped. Skip this one row. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that test should fail now for a couple of different reasons, right? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, this one is failing right now because of our pre-enumeration. That was skip state attributes with skip reason. Oh no, that's the one we expected to skip, to fail. This one... Oh, these are failing because I made them public. That's fine. That's fine. I want them to stay public for the moment. But what I want to do is go back to turning off pre-enumeration. So now I should have 3 fail instead of 2. There we go. So 4 and 6 here. Skip state attributes with skip reason. So we have 6 in our summary. So in past we have class under test with some data skipped. So here we're going to do that. Those are doubles. Cert not equal to 0. So that's, call you sum data 2 not skipped. We'll call you sum data 2 skipped. Okay. So then we have cert collection. These passed. Order by the, well, we would like to order by the display name, but we don't have the display name. Display name has to come out of this. Let's do this. That's not easy. That's not easy either. I guess what we have to do is this. Where the starting test unique ID is equal to the passing test unique ID. Should be a single one of those. That gets me the enumeration starting. Let's get the display name, and then the display name. Order by the display name. Why? You know, when you work against me, Visual Studio, you really fucking work against me. So give me the startings. There should be 2 of those for past. Expected 1 got 2. What? Oh, yes, 2 failed. 2 skipped. 6 total, 2 skipped, 2 failed. This should actually be 3. Okay. So there's our first display name. Yeesh. Which is why we do this. 2.1 in G17. because who the hell knows what it's going to look like. Not skipped. Then we've got some data 2 skipped. So you're... Come on. Fuck. Okay, keyboard, what the hell did you do? Keyboard. Keyboard busted. Something's busted. Oh, god damn it, I'm in French mode. Don't know why, you just magically got into French mode. 36.48 in G17. Is some data 2 skipped. Oh, 36.48. Not 49. Okay. Then we've got failed. Which we think is a singular. Right. Except we get two. We got two of them. We're in French mode again. Oh, how the fuck we keep getting in French mode? Let's see. Windows 10 shortcut key to change keyboard language. Open the settings app by hitting that. Sure. Go to the typing tab. Yeah, there's not really a typing. Is there? Typing. Typing settings. Let's see. Of action. On the right panel, scroll down, find the. Okay, well, I guess I need the whole fucking article, don't I? Find the advanced keyboard settings under more keyboard settings. Use the language list. Recommended. If you want to use an input method that's different than the first one in the language list, choose it here. So I always want English. Input language hotkeys. Left Alt Shift toggles languages. Not assigned. Holy shit. No wonder I keep switching the language. Well, thank you for going on that little journey with me. In case you're wondering why I have French installed in addition to English, it's because I want... I use French as my second language. Right, I have this culture-aware fact attribute. And then whenever I do a cultured fact or cultured theory, it runs the thing twice in US English and French. And so I want it to, I installed French so that I could get the French.net exception list, essentially. So that when things are being printed in French, I know it. So this is the first one of these, right? And the second one of these will be a failure. This should not be a passed test, by the way. Sort of just realizing that, given its name. And then last, let's get all the tests skipped. Now you're going to tell me that you're expecting 2, but you only got 1. Huh. Oh no, there were 2 down there. So we're going to have 3. And we're going to have this one as well, right? So this is where the bug is. This is supposed to be skipped, so you're going to come down here. Total is going to be 6, our skipped is going to be 3, our failed is going to be 2. So there's our passing, and our failed, and our skipped. So there's the bug. Go fix the bug. Okay, so that is this. Does that fix the bug? Yes, but now things are in a different order. Right, because 18 comes before 42 alphabetically. There you go. Now we see we have our fail and skip there. And that is with pre-enumerate theories off. Pre-enumerate theories on. We have our fail and skip. Very good. Let's go unpublic those. All right, let's go unpublic that because we really don't want that there. Okay. So, what have we done so far? XUnit, sure. This is the flaky, the test is potentially flaky. I think I'm going to undo that change. Okay, why do I have so damn many windows and the one I want isn't in my L? Alright, let's undo that change. Wrong place. Okay. So theory discoverer tests can classes skip theory data rows. Can skip from a theory data row pre-enumerated. Say pre-enumerated, but then, you know, it's over here where the non-pre-enumerated version gets tested. Okay. This just needs to, yeah, let's just copy that. Yeah. Okay. Then let's go back to line diffs. So we basically just restructured this a little bit better, adding our new set of data, some of which is skipped and some of which is not. Put skip reason in iTheory data row. We allow member data to directly use iTheory data row. I feel like that's like we got that test sort of accidentally for free, kind of. I don't really know how else we allow this to be done. All right, so if I go and look at all the data attributes, so here's data attribute, your iTheory data row now. So what are all the implementations? All right, we have class, inline, member, member base. So class, we have a to-do here to allow classes to do this. So we need to add this to class data. And then we can't do it for inline data, right? Because inline data is literally, the data is literally here. So we do that for them. So we don't need inline data. And then we have, the other one is member, which we already did. Member, we did it here. Because this is an abstract on the base. So it's really just class. And so I'm going to reverse this. Okay. Okay. Now, from a test perspective, We don't necessarily directly have class data attribute tests, but we can find instances of class data, which apparently are in theory acceptance tests. Runs for each data element. No default constructor fails. Can return theory row data. So let's do this. Runs for each data element. Let's steal that. Yeah, class data. Do this. Well, actually, we should just do this. Call you class with object array class under test for object array data source Okay, we're going to put you there, but actually I'm going to put you up above the failure case. Okay, so this is a class under test for theory row data. And then you are a theory row data source. You are an I enumerable of I theory row data row, theory data row, theory data row data source. So you return an I new theory data row for that data. And a theory data row for that data. Theory data row for 16, 32, 64. Skip. Do not run this. Okay. So you're going to run that. You're going to get that, which, by the way, your name's just changed to. You're going to get a passing, you're going to get a failing. You're not going to get a skipped. Skipped starting. Skipped. And we'll come get our name in a moment. Okay. So we expected you to contain a single element, but you were empty. Oops, what line was that? 637, right? Oh, 601. 601. I'm confused. Oh, 601 is the wrong line. 630 is where I should have been. 630, we expected you to have a passing test, but you got nothing. You got nothing. Okay. Go away. Go away. It's like the worst feature in Visual Studio. These are not unhandled exceptions. You are a liar, Visual Studio. You're lying to me. And I get caught elsewhere. Just because I don't get caught in that function doesn't mean they're not unhandled. Okay. So our test messages look like what? Where's my hover? Can't evaluate anything. The fuck? Starting and finished. You didn't run anything. Class, because I put the wrong type up here. Dumby. Okay. Single element buzz was empty. 630. Still. Really? Still. Function starting case, method case. Okay, so we started this, we failed this. That's it. One failure. It has to be a class data. One failure. So give me 6. Messages. You know what? Fuck off. Must implement IEnumerable of object. Okay. That makes sense. We haven't gotten where we needed to get yet, so class data attributes. If class instance is IEnumerable of iTheory data row, data rows, return data rows. Cast or to read-only collection. Okay. You're just going to pass now? Other than we need some strings? Kind of feels like that, doesn't it? Okay. So this is 3264 G17. You are skip. Then do not run this. Skip reason. You don't need a $sign. Okay, you're too slow. Too slow in debug. Okay. So that gets us class data attribute. Alright, so that's it for that. Okay. So we enable skipping. Should be called skip reason, should be called skip. In the fact attribute, we call it skip. We'll call it skip. Okay. This all looks good. Okay. $17.58 allow skipping. Skipping tests. Skipping individual data rows via theory data row. And we'll run a full build. Traits was the next thing they really wanted. I think, for the moment though, I'm probably going to call this so I can have some lunch, some grocery shopping. Might get back to it later today, but probably not on stream though. So, while this is running, let's see if I can get my Whizzle to pop up. I guess I need to reboot. Does not appear to be pleased with me. Nope. Whizzle dead. Not good. Need Whizzle for work, so. Not bueno. It's looking good. Go ahead and push those up. They should pop up here in one unhelpful comment was not shown. +1 is apparently not helpful. I suppose you could have used the thumbs up, but maybe the thumbs up didn't exist in 2018. Okay. Well, so they're still in the dev branch. That'll be fine. Leave them in a dev branch for now, and then we'll go pick them up into main once it's done. Yeah. Go pick it up into main once it's done, or at least as done as I think I'm going to get in the first pass, which is at least add traits, and then maybe the display name for the data comes from the data attribute. But that one's going to be a little bit more interesting because that display logic sort of sits out in the argument formatter today. So yeah, we'll have to see. I've got open issues on pluggability for the argument formatter, which is something people have been wanting to do anyway, which is kind of a different way to attack the problem, but I think we want both. So anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I'll hopefully see you next week.